All right, good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Michelle Jordan, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Evanston. Welcome to a forum for the candidates running in the upcoming election for City Council, the 2nd and 8th wards. City Council members serve a 4-year term. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization dedicated to promoting the active and informed participation of citizens in their government, and we sponsor these events as a service to the community. The League of Women Voters neither endorses nor opposes candidates for public office. I'd like to thank the city for providing this space and the services for today's forum. Our moderator today is Valerie Krejci. Valerie has been a League member for over 30 years. She has served as president of the Evanston League and also served on both the Cook County and State League boards. Valerie is a retired educator who lives and votes in Skokie and is a talented cartographer. Valerie will review the forum rules, introduce the candidates, and begin the questioning. Take it away, Valerie.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I'm just so glad to be here with you today because I have this one and the one after this. But again, I'm from Skokie, so I'm new to this forum. Our candidates are in alphabetical order, but it's worked out so nice that we have Ward 2 and Ward 8 here. And I will call on them in time. They each have a minute and a half to respond to the questions. There's timers up front here. We ask that there's no flash photography during the forum, or and we're trying to be polite. You know, we're giving as many voters a chance to hear from the candidates, and it's being taped, so it'll be on the website after this. The audience is instructed to remain silent and in their seats, and I'm going to enforce the rules and the timing, and we're going to have a nice time here. We got an hour. The questions were brought from different groups, and we screen them so they're not, attacks, and they cover as many issues as we can get to. And I think I've summed it up pretty well. So we're going to start with candidate, I got to make sure I say this right, Cannon. And you have 1.5, well, let's go here. Candidate Cannon, Candidate Cannon, Candidate Harris, Candidate Mendoza, Candidate Reed, and Candidate Rogers. So you have 3 women for the Ward 2 and 2 men for choice for Ward 8. But we're going to combine this. So you have a minute and a half for the first question that will go to all of you, and then we'll rotate who goes first. Question number 1. What do you believe is the top challenge facing the city today, and why? Oh, yes, it should work.
Okay, thank you. I believe the top challenge for residents in Evanston is affordability. Evanston is a very expensive place to live at, and if we continue to raise our taxes each year, we will be displacing lots of families who've been here for a long time, and people who've been here for generations. So affordability is the top reason why, to my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Harris, same question. You've got a minute and a half. You don't have to take the whole minute and a half. And then we'll get to more questions.
All right, I'll be brief. I think finances are the biggest issue, trying to allocate what we do for the city with the resources that we have, and understanding that right now we are facing a national challenge that is going to limit the funds that we already have. So encompassing our human services, what we do for our community, housing, the services for public works. I think so money is going to be the key and the challenge that we have in this daunting time. But I believe that Evanston is made up of the people that will make it work. So thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Mendoza.
Yeah, so definitely affordability is a big issue, and we're rising property taxes when we look at the situation with our schools right now, especially D65. We know that that's going to have an impact on property owners and on renters, and increasing property taxes does increase rent also. So I think it's appropriate that we keep property taxes where they're at the city level, and that we're looking at our assets, making sure we're putting them to work appropriately.
Thank you. Candidate Reed.
Thank you very much for the question. One, I'm honored to be here with the League of Women Voters to address the issues of folks all across Evanston, but particularly in the 8th Ward. So what is the top issue here in Evanston? It's hard to pick one. I think that there are a number. I think, focusing on what folks here have said, I agree that affordability is a critical issue in our city finances. That's why I'm really proud that this council has not raised property taxes our entire term. We've held the levy flat, and that's helped with affordability here in Evanston. But we certainly, as Councilmember Harris pointed out, our financial situation is going to be one that we have to focus on in the next term. We know that we have a structural deficit that we have to address, and that structural deficit is only growing with the move to 909 Davis. But we've got some reserves, and I think we need to put those reserves to work, because when we have $50 million of your money sitting in the bank, that's not doing anything to help you. That is helping the large institutions and banks. And so I think we have to do a better job of drawing down on that reserve and ensuring that we are promoting affordability by being responsible financial stewards of the taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Rogers.
Thank you. And again, thank you to the League for hosting this. I'm very happy to be here to share ideas with you and to take your questions. The top challenges, it's kind of odd going last because people steal all the good answers. Definitely financial is one of the biggest issues that the city is going to face. And that involves our budgeting and how we budget, what we budget for. And that indirectly impacts the affordability question that also has come up. So I think we need to look at focusing our budget on the items that only the city of Evanston can take care of. Things like our police, fire, health, our infrastructure, enforcing our regulations. Those are the type of things that we need to prioritize in taking care of ourselves and taking care of the citizens of the city, and making sure that those things are paid for, then looking beyond that about where can we partner with people in order to expand that. We aren't going to get that partnership from the federal government for at least the next 4 years. And so what other partners are there? Are there not-for-profits? Are there other governmental organizations that we can be working with? And I'd like to work very hard on those issues for the next 4 years.
Thank you. Now, I want to reassure you, you'll be first for some question. So now we're going to go to Candidate Harris. So you'll go first on question number 2. And this is the question. The city has not raised property taxes for 2 years. What additional sources of revenue would you support? What cuts to current programs would you support to help balance the budget?
Thank you for the question. I knew the tax question would come up, and yes, we haven't raised them for the city. They have been raised through the other entities that funnel into our city tax. I think partnerships with different entities is really important, and it will depend on what that is. So looking at our infrastructure, our CIP, what places out there for example, parks, what places are out there that we are able to partner with, what community development, what residents can we partner with. I think government is about partnership, and that's where we see the breakdown on a national level, that there is no working together to do anything. So off the top of my head, I wouldn't pull out any one entity because I don't want to show favoritism, but I think working with anyone that has the different services that we need. Cutting is where we have to look at what and where and who it affects, because there's always unintended consequences when you make a cut. And again, with the volatile national level that we're dealing with, we really need to be meticulous and look at where we cut or where we cut back. I don't know that we have to cut anything, as Evanston is a very generous community, and I don't want to harm cause more harm than what's already happening on a national level. So I think we just have to really look at the whole budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Mendoza.
Yeah, so I believe it's important to put our assets to work. When we look at the assets that the city has, we need to make sure that we're utilizing and getting money from those assets. I do not support raising property taxes, especially with the 4 years that are coming. I don't think it's the right move to put that burden on our residents, especially with affordability being so great in the second ward and in all of Evanston, of course. I support zero-based budgeting. I think it's important that we look at our finances, and if we have money that's not being used, that we move that money somewhere else or find a better use for it. And of course, I think we have successfully fought this administration in court in 2018 and had a lot of funds released back into cities. And we're seeing a lot of these cases in court being fought successfully. So I think when it comes to the current administration, we need to put some hope into our democracy, and we need to look at that. But right now, raising property taxes is not a priority for me at all, and I stand by not doing it. So we need to make sure that we're looking at the money that Evanston has, we're using it appropriately, and that our residents are benefiting from everything that the city has to provide for them.
Thank you. Candidate Reed.
Thank you. So as I mentioned in my opening, I'll correct you. You said we haven't raised property taxes in 2 years. We have not raised property taxes the entire term for the city of Evanston, while our other taxing bodies certainly have. But I have been, and I don't feel bad saying this, I've been one of the only council members to consistently put forward new ideas for revenue that just don't fall disproportionately on the backs of Evanston residents, and particularly on those folks who are least proximate to power. And so I'm really proud of the fact that, if you were to tally up many of our, how much new revenue a council member has added and how many new expenses council members have added, I think I've added more revenue with my proposals than new expenditures. And so really proud of being a part of finding new revenue sources. I'm also really proud that the city of Evanston and with myself and other members of council, Councilmember Harris and others, we made a historic deal with Northwestern University and secured $175 million over the next 15 years that will help the city balance its budget. We've got about $30 million over the next 15 years going to affordable housing that we have not had in the past.
Thanks.
So,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Candidate Rogers.
Thank you. Obviously no one wants to raise property taxes. That's always the last thing you want to go to. So we have to be creative in looking at the things that we can do to generate additional income. I'm very excited about trying to find ways to partner with other entities in order to deliver some of the services that we do deliver for our residents. I also think that it's very important that we look at any new income that we're wanting to create for the city, that we're very careful about who's paying that money to us. We definitely do not want to put in regressive taxing, which hurts the most vulnerable in our communities. We want to make sure that we are able to deliver top quality services, and we need to make sure that when we are doing things that we're really working hard to deliver the services we need to people. And some of that involves looking at how can we be a more efficient government for people? And I know it's kind of a bad word to use right now because of DOGE being out there, but there are actually things that we can do to be a more efficient government, to work harder for the citizens of Evanston and not spend as much money doing so. Thank you.
Candidate Cannon.
All right, thank you. So what cuts to prevent raising taxes? I think we need to look at what we're spending our money on and how we're spending our money. Our budget's supposed to be a reflection of our values and our beliefs. We do have a lot in reserve, so we need to look at how we can lower the amounts in the reserves to level out not raising taxes or other fees such as, the wheel tax or water or so forth. We can look at how many consultants we use as a city. We spend a lot of money on consultants, so we need to review that as well. We also do a lot of change orders. And when we're doing projects and then there's a change orders, these things cost money. And so those are some of the things, because we don't want to do away with any of our services. Right now, we have excellent employees who are in public works, and we want to keep not just the public works, but all of our city employees that are working hard. We want to make sure that they still have jobs here in Evanston. So, and we can look for partnering with other entities as well to see, how we can, still provide the services to our residents and to organizations that provide services to our residents as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to question number 3, goes to candidate number 3, Mendoza. Envision 2045 makes many recommendations, including zoning changes. What changes to zoning do you think should be made to address the need to increase the housing stock in Evanston?
Yeah, so when we look at zoning, my primary concern is making sure that we're bringing the voices of the second ward into the zoning talk. The feedback that I get is that a lot of people move to Evanston because they enjoy their single-family homes. They don't want to live in a place that looks like Chicago. They don't want to live in a place that's full of large buildings where their children can't ride their bikes around town. Their children don't know their neighbors. They want to live in a place that looks less like Chicago and more like Evanston is right now. I do approve that to having duplexes available. We'll change that, having up to maybe 3 units, but up to 4 units, a lot of the people in the second ward that I've talked to and I've knocked on a lot of doors they're just not for that. So for me, my concern is bringing the voices of the second ward to the city council, hearing from them, what do they want, what do they approve, and my job is to hear that and bring that here. And I do think that we need more. We need to listen to our residents first and go from there.
Thank you. Candidate Reed?
Thank you. One, I am really excited that we're engaging in the Envision Evanston 2045 process. I wish it would have started earlier in the term and not at the end of the term, and not particularly during an election where my opponent was the chair of the Land Use Commission, so not fun timing. But I do think that this is an issue that is obviously it's critical to everything we do here, and I'm really excited that the council has decided to decouple the comprehensive planning process from the zoning amendments. That gives us more time to hear feedback from the community, ensure that whatever we put forward as a final proposal will more fully reflect the desires of the community. But I have to say that it is very difficult to say that we want to increase affordability and stabilize the city's finances when we aren't using our, we have 2 limited resources here in any city, but here in the city of Evanston, and it's the limited resource of the land that we have. We only have, the geographic footprint that we have, and it's the people that live here in our city. And if we aren't more effectively using the limited land that we have, then we are going to continue to either have to raise property taxes and fees, or we aren't going to be able to provide the level of service that people expect. And so I think it's critical that we explore all options from getting rid of.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Rogers.
Thank you. Yes, obviously Envision Evanston is something that I've been working with intensively as my former position of land use chair, as well as having worked with the zoning ordinance that we've had for many years. Our zoning ordinance is severely old and outdated. Our comp plan is old and outdated. These are documents that need to be updated. But the important thing is that it's not the vision of the Land Use Commission or the vision of City Council. It's the vision of the community and what the community thinks is appropriate. During the time that I was on land use, people would come and say, we don't want, we don't want. And my answer back to them always was, tell us what you do want. Don't give me the negatives, give me the positives. And the things that I'm hearing from people are reasonable, common sense approaches to increasing density in certain parts of the city, not across the entire city, but making sure that we're doing things like bringing more people into our business districts by putting housing above those business districts, making sure that people have the ability to use their properties in the way that makes sense for them. That's why I favor 2 flats. That's why I've been very supportive of accessory dwelling units. It allows people to stay in their homes, to make their homes work better for them. And I think part of that also includes adaptive reuse of any building that we have out there, making sure that when we convert buildings over to housing, we're doing it, we're not just tearing down old buildings, we're actually making use of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Cannon.
Okay, so some of my concerns about Envision 2045 is I am not a fan of demonizing people who own single-family homes. I think that we need to have a variety of different types of housing, and when we look at creating more density, we need to create it in areas where it's not already dense, where we're not adding more people, more cars, taking up more parking space, more just more activity in already dense areas. Another thing that I think that what needed to be changed about Envision 2045 was that when the zoning, for example, the R1 zoning, it says R1 zoning and it stays the same, but it has a different definition. So I think once people started looking at that, that became very problematic. We need to help people who have naturally occurring affordable housing. We have a lot of landlords who have housing. We need to do everything we can to help them stay and keep their housing units affordable. When we do have buildings that are built, we need to make sure that we need to come into some sort of agreement so that they accept housing vouchers as well. We need limited equity co-ops, and we need land trusts in order for people to be able to live here and stay
Thanks.
here. Thank you.
Candidate Harris.
Thank you. Can you repeat the question so
Sure.
I'm clear?
Envision 2045 makes many recommendations, including zoning changes. What changes to zoning do you think should be made to address the needs to increase the housing stock in Evanston?
Okay, thank you. So I think that it becomes important that each neighborhood is engaged. And this has been an opportunity for people to be engaged. And what I've learned in Evanston is once it seems to get serious, people get more engaged and say they have not had an opportunity to look at things. So communities need to get more engaged and see what works for them. This is not a one-size-fits-all. It is not a standard that each ward would be able to meet equally, right? So we know that equity is really important, that every ward is able to take the capacity that they can. We do want people moving. Since COVID, people have not moved the same way, and we're trying to do that. We're trying to have a very vibrant community. My biggest concern in the second ward that I get calls about all the time is that people that already live here, that are invested here, that are, I think I'm one of the longest generations, so I don't know if there's any fifth or sixth generation people here, but that generational families have the opportunity to stay, and that we make that available and help how we can, not just renters, but all members of this community, and that is weighed across the city.
Thank you. Okay, I think I'm on track here for question number 4 to go to candidate Reed. Many city properties, including fire stations, the police station, and the Civic Center, are in need of immense renovations or new buildings. What do you see as the best way to address these critical needs and avoid similar situations in the future?
Thank you for the question. One is critically, the city has to do a better job of amortizing the cost of maintaining our buildings. I don't think we've done a great job of that. That's why we're in a civic center that we've been in since the 70s, and it's in the condition that it's in. That's why our police department has fallen into the condition that it is, because we're not appropriately tracking our cost. Another thing is that we have to ensure that now that we are here, we have to ensure that we are looking out for the taxpayer's bottom line and ensuring that we're making the most cost-effective decisions. When you look at the 909 Davis lease, which I voted against, but was a successful measure on council, we are, over the term of the lease, we will pay more in rent than what the building sold for just a few years ago. The building sold for $28 million a few years ago, and we're going to be paying well over $30 million in rent, as well as when you look at the operating cost, we'll be paying closer to $60 million over the next 15 years, or the next 20 years. And so I think we have to ensure that we are that we're making fiscally sound decisions. I think that, leaving the civic center makes sense in the short term, but I think in the long term, we will have to figure out how to
Okay, thank you.
manage our buildings.
Candidate Rogers.
Thank you. During one of the things I do for my day job is I manage 3 buildings that are each 100 years old. And we have put together a plan for how we are taking care of those buildings. That's something the city of Evanston really has not done, is taken a look at its buildings and said, what is our plan for funding on this building for the next 5, for the next 10 years? What sort of things do we see coming down the road that are going to happen in these buildings? We tend to be very reactionary on our buildings, and that's why we've allowed them to fall into the state that they are currently in. We have a program called Putting Our Assets to Work. And that's one of the things that we need to keep in mind, is these buildings should not be just sitting here. We should be making them do work for the people of Evanston, for the city government, and what can we do in order to encourage that? I don't want to see us having buildings that we are getting rid of, that then we just have them sitting around because we don't have a long-term plan for them. We have a period of time where we'll be out of this particular building. Does it make sense to move back into this building? I don't know. There's still numbers that are being floated around. But one of the things that I do think we have to do is, if we are going to get rid of this building, what is our plan for this building? It can't just be, we're going to just put it out on the market and see if anybody buys it. There have to be long-term plans for the maintenance and for the disposition or the acquisition of any properties the city has.
Thank you. Candidate Cannon.
Thank you. Can you repeat the question again, please?
Many city properties, including fire stations, the police station, and the civic center, are in need of immense renovations or new buildings. What do you see as the best way to address these critical needs and avoid similar situations in the future?
Thank you. So I agree. I think planning is the big issue. And I think that, unfortunately, the city of Evanston, along with 65, don't do a good job at maintaining these buildings. So, the solution to move, I was adamantly against that, because, again, we're going to be paying a lot of money for rent and it's going to be what I would deem an inconvenience for many in our disabled community, because Endeavor is there and they have people who are coming and they have a limited disabled parking right there, and for people to transition over is a problem. We should be looking for something that is maintaining this building piece by piece, as Matt said. You have to have a plan, and you have to stick to it, and maintain our properties. But if we move somewhere else in downtown, I've heard talks about the library. Is that going to be big enough? It does offer parking, which is a benefit. So looking at how we're spending our money on maintaining our buildings, because right now we're not spending money on it, and, really doing what's best and what's feasible for city employees and for the community as well. I think it's important.
Great, thank you. Candidate Harris?
Thank you. So I have a degree in construction. I went to college for construction, and that was one of the first things when I was seated, being the newest council member at that time. We didn't have plans for our buildings, and that was very concerning to me. Like, you own a home, you know you have to check the furnace, you have to plan. They're working on how to systematically do that for Evanston, because we have beautiful architecture. You have to take care of it, though, with anything that you own. If you don't maintain it, if you don't have a plan, financial plan, then it will run into ruins and end up costing you more than usually the routine maintenance. So I think we have to look at what the maintenance costs. We have to decide what our priorities are. And I find that sometimes we are in conflict with ourselves. We find ourselves in conflict. So really understanding what our priorities are from a community and city level, and then figure out what that looks like. Being fiscally sound with the finances that we have. How can we make things happen? I know people have mentioned that you run into change orders, and we understand that that happens. You open up a wall, and something in that wall you weren't prepared to deal with, and you still have to deal with it. You can't just close it because you weren't prepared for it. So with the cost of things right now, it's really going to be very hard to make that priority and make everyone happy.
Thank you. Candidate Mendoza.
Yeah, so I think we need to be proactive and not reactive. You know, when we look into why don't we have a plan, it is us, city council, who's sitting up here, who direct our city staff to make that plan. So I think it's important for us to be proactive, and if we see that there's something missing, we don't have plans in place, that we are directing our staff to take care of those. But another feedback that we hear often is that we are understaffed, right? We're missing people in certain positions in order to add that workload to them. I work for the city, so I don't believe in putting more work on one person. I don't think that is fair for any one individual. I think the move downtown is a great move. This building is not accessible. I myself am a person with a disability. So on days when I cannot physically walk to certain places in a long distance, this building right here is not very accessible. The other building does have some parking spaces, and I think that once we are down there, we can start working on whether the underground parking spaces can be utilized a little bit more. But we need to be proactive, not reactive. We need to have a plan in place, and we need to put our assets to work above all. If we have extra space like we do in this building, let's rent it out to nonprofits. There's a lot of nonprofits looking for an office space to work out of, so we need to make sure that we are looking at all those options. Thank you.
Thank you. Right under the wire. Okay, now we're going to go to question number 5, and candidate Rogers goes first. So that means everybody had a chance. This is number 5. What is your understanding of the level of housing cost burden in your ward versus that in the city as a whole? What do you think the city should do to increase the supply of affordable housing, and how do you feel that sites for such housing should be selected?
A lot in that question.
I'm just reading them.
Yep. So in terms of the cost of housing burden that we face in the city and in the 8th Ward, the numbers are staggering for the city. I believe that with renters, it's about 50%, high 40s to 50 of people who are spending most of their money on their housing. And that's not a good way to sustain an economy, because that hurts our small businesses, that hurts those people being able to take care of the things that they need to take care of, their health care, their children, daycare for children, those sorts of things. It's very hard to build affordable housing in Evanston. We've often relied on the federal government, Cook County, or another entity to come in and help sustain us on those sorts of things. And that's going to be very hard over the next 4 years in particular. One of the things that we can do is, when we look at putting our assets to work, is the city has property. The city has locations. And those things we need to explore. Is that someplace that's ripe for affordable housing that we can do something on? The Eighth Ward has really lifted heavily along Howard Street with the Anne Rainey apartment building, with the Gateway, as well as many other projects that have happened down there. We're doing what we can to help affordable housing in Evanston, and I would like to see that sort of expand throughout the rest of the city as well.
Thank you. Candidate Cannon.
Thank you. Yes, the cost of being a homeowner has increased tremendously. I'm a homeowner since '95. I think that we need to look at empty lots that might be available, or where we can put in ADUs, or where we can put in lots where we can put in houses in the land trust. We also have a lot of different areas where we have parking lots that are just, it was a house there at one point, and now cars just occupy there off of Dempster. That would be an excellent place for some additional housing. Again, looking at the naturally occurring affordable housing to make sure that the landlords are able to keep those affordable, and that they as well take vouchers. Whatever we can do for those type of measures to try to help keep people here. Not everyone does, and not everyone wants to own a home, but some people want to have a stable, affordable place that they can rent that is accessible and close to shopping and everything. So we have to look at all the different things that are around that we can utilize. So thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Harris.
Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned before, Evanston finds itself very conflicted. We want to do affordable housing, and when you look at places like Lake and Dodge, I was met with resistance to put a house there and affordable and make it a land trust. So we have to really mean what we say and say what we mean, and not be conflicted in how we feel about providing affordable housing. And I think land trusts, with the opportunities that we have in property, working with our neighbors to make them understand why it's important that we have homes. Because again, I mentioned I have people who've lived here for 3 and 4 generations that are almost priced out of their homes. And I want to make sure those people are able to stay in their great-grandmother's home, their grandmother's home, or home they bought that they intend to leave for their children. So we have to, as a city, and not just the council, because it's only 9 of us up here voting, but a city, really take into consideration what we say when we want to have affordable housing, but then say, not next to where I live. I don't want that house next to my house. I don't want that here. And really come, and that's okay to feel that way, but the community overall has to have that say. We have to work, and I think the city is committed to that in the ways in which we can. Everybody, unfortunately, will not be able to live here because they want to.
Thanks. Candidate Mendoza.
Yeah, so when we look at how much people are spending on rent, it's crazy. I'm a renter. I spend a lot of my income goes primarily to keep a house over my head, over my child's head, or my son's head. So it is very difficult to be in that position. When we look at our affordable, how much affordable housing is required in the new buildings, that is one way to work towards it. So right now it's going up to 15%, but there is a buyout. And while that buyout is pretty large, I think there's some people that sometimes are going to be maybe wanting to buy out. So even though that's going to go to affordable housing, I think if we want to make sure that we're building that stock, that we increase that percentage up to 20%, that we take away the buyout, and that we are talking with our developers beforehand and make sure that we tell them, look, as a council person, if you are looking to get my vote, this is what we want. We want more units. We want more units that are 3-bedroom, that are 2-bedroom. We don't want everything to just be studio apartments. While I think our Northwestern students do need housing also here in the city, I think it's important that we focus some attention on the housing needs of families, even smaller families like mine, just me, my husband, and a son. But we need to look at 2, 3-bedroom units in these new buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Reed.
Thank you very much for the question. It was mentioned earlier by my opponent that it's hard to build affordable housing in Evanston. And that's certainly true. It's hard to build affordable housing across the nation. But part of the issue is our zoning laws and our restrictive ordinances that make it more difficult to build affordable housing here. And it concerns me that it seems as though my opponent in his time on the Land Use Commission has not really taken that issue on and used the power that he had to address that, and in fact has seemed to have been opposing many of the really important changes that we're proposing with the Envision Evanston zoning code reform. And so I think it's critical that if we are going to increase the affordable housing stock, that we really take on those barriers, those artificial barriers that are created by our zoning code. But another part of it is that we have to address predatory behavior. We know that part of the increase in cost of housing is that we have speculators and folks who are buying up housing across the nation. And I think the city of Evanston can use its home rule authority to put in place measures that will combat that trend. We can put in measures like a vacancy tax and others that will help us address that. And I think it's really critical that in my time as council member, I have worked hard over the last 4 years to put together a deal that will allow us to build family units in the 8th Ward. Thank you.
Okay, question number 6 is going to go to Candidate Cannon first. What issues, specific or unique to your ward, need to be addressed by council?
Okay. So I think a couple of things. I look at, when I talk to people at the doors or outside of that, people are looking to have a two-way conversation where they can ask questions and get responses to different issues. We need to figure out a way where when people have issues, I think sometimes people don't always know if they're having an issue with a neighbor who to contact. So then, it's not as straightforward. We need to look at some of the ways that people have complained about getting excessive parking tickets. So it almost feels like people are being targeted as well. Those are some of the issues. And, as we've already said, affordability, we need to really address individual needs and, as far as with some of our landlords too, about maintaining their buildings in the 2nd Ward as well. Because that affects the residents in the area as well. So looking at those issues, those are the issues that I hear the most about and that people are the most concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Harris.
Thank you. As the current sitting council member for the past 2 years, I receive over 100 emails a day from residents. So I do believe residents who are engaged know where to go. And if they aren't, then I need to knock more doors and be more present. But I do believe the council persons are present not only in the 2nd Ward, and I stated that when I first got seated, that my responsibility primarily is the 2nd Ward, but we are guardians of the city in general, and we need to be responsible for all that happens throughout the city. I think some of the most important things are making sure that the businesses, 2nd Ward is the most diverse culturally, business, and economically, and making sure that everybody is working in conjunction and in unison. We've had problems at our corridor of Dempster and Dodge because that is a heavy populated, heavy visited spot. And I've worked with the public safety teams, be it the care team, the police department, and even the businesses to know who to reach out to when things kind of get unruly and have been hands or really feet on the ground as soon as something happens and I'm alerted. As a council member, I'm ever present. So I think hearing the concerns, and they change on a regular basis, but being available is important. And as a council person, I've done that successfully for the past 2 years. Thank you.
May I ask you to repeat the question?
Thank you. Yeah, but it's going to go next to candidate Mendoza, but I'll repeat the question so you can think about it. What issues specific or unique to your ward need to be addressed by council? Candidate Mendoza.
So issues addressed by council. One of the issues is property taxes. People do not want their property taxes increased. So this is not so much addressed, but making sure that we're keeping the same mindset on council where we do not want to keep adding on to that burden. People are very worried about the possibility of having someone on council who believes in increasing property taxes. I was going to bring up parking tickets too. I'm glad Ms. Cannon brought up parking tickets. Yes, a lot of people are very concerned about parking tickets. $75 on someone like myself who has to pay insurance, who has to pay so many things for my disabled son, is a lot. I have had my car barnacled. That's how difficult it is for the residents in the second ward. So we need to make sure that we are providing either a sliding scale or reducing that cost to our residents, not only in the second ward, but throughout Evanston. And our businesses sometimes don't know how to access the grants. They don't know who to go to, and they're not getting an answer back. They're not sure if they should speak to their council person. Should I be speaking to somebody at the city? So we need to make sure that we're informing our businesses on how to access that money. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Reed.
Thank you. So specific to the 8th Ward, I think, the thing that I get calls about and emails about, not quite 100 a day. The 8th Ward has got to step up and reach out more, but please, is public safety. Public safety and quality of life. I get calls. One of the things we've had to deal with in the 8th Ward is we are the only, and Councilmember Harris has actually helped with this and come to the 8th Ward to help. But we have had to deal with an encampment unlike any other in the city of Evanston near the Howard train station, which has become an open air drug market, and it is concerning. And so we've had to work very closely with the city of Chicago and many departments across the city and of Evanston and Chicago to address this. I have residents reaching out about folks who are occupying parks. And so we have taken a host of steps. I think there's more that we can do. I think I'm really excited that to have been a leader in pushing for the new crisis alternative response team here in Evanston, the CARE team. I think that has made a tremendous difference and has freed up the resources of our police department to more effectively target the kinds of issues that they are most equipped to, and has allowed our CARE team as well as our youth and young adult division to really focus in on the issues that they're best equipped to. And so
Thanks.
I think we can continue that into the future. Thank you.
Candidate Rogers.
Thank you. I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot in the ward as I talk to people is we really need to do a better job of making sure the city is working for its residents. People call 311, people call into various departments, and you need to have somebody who's making sure that the city is doing what it should be doing for those people, making sure that it's stepping up, making sure that it's communicating to people that these are issues in your particular neighborhood, so that you're sharing that idea with other neighbors. And one of the things that I'm working on right now to do that is to revitalize the old 8th Ward message board. We've actually been beta testing it and are getting ready to go out. And whether I win or not, that is a gift to the 8th Ward, because it's something that's very important in keeping people in touch throughout the different neighborhoods. The other thing that I think is very important is Howard Street is a major economic engine for the 8th Ward, and we need to make sure that we're supporting those businesses. They had a tough time going through COVID. Some of the businesses did not survive or really had stretched themselves very thin. And so we need to do that, and I'm very pleased to see that we're working with the City of Chicago on that. But I also want to make sure that we maintain Evanston's side of it as Evanston and not become just another addition onto Chicago, taking over the north side of Howard as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm watching the clock, and I'm going to give you a final question and hopefully have enough time for you all to do your 1.5 summary. So, last question of the evening or the afternoon goes first to candidate Harris. Are there any procedural changes that you would suggest to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the council and their participation on committees, boards, and commissions?
Being a practitioner of processes, yes, I think you can always increase and work on a process. I think everybody should, as we say in the city, all council members should be on councils, boards, and commissions to help hear what residents are saying. I think Councilmember Reed is on the most. I think I'm on 4 or 5. I think we all need to do that. I think we all need to hear what residents are saying. Again, not just in our ward, because we work together. As Councilmember Reed said on Howard Street, I was boots on the ground. And one of the main reasons is I have family that live over there, and I drive over there, and that was important to me. And so I get calls from other wards to help, and I always work with that council person, but I don't just say, oh, that's not my ward. It's important that we all work together because we're one community, and I'm only one vote. While my vote carries weight, it's one vote, and I have to work together with the other 8 council members to make sure we're in alignment, that they understand what the needs of the community from our perspective are, and to carry that on. So I think that we can work on our efficiency, our effectiveness, and we will now figure out how to work on, we have a lot of meetings, and now at the 909 building, we will not be able to have them all at the same time in the same place. So we'll be working on those most definitely.
Thank you. Candidate Mendoza.
Yeah, so my goal is, as right now, I watch as many boards, commission, and committees, and every single council meeting that I can in person, and when or online, but when I can't, I go back and look at them. I think it's important that as council people, we are staying involved and we are hearing from our residents, and the best way to do that is to go to our boards, commission, and committees, be part of them, get involved in them. For me, something that I am bringing differently is that I plan to make this my full-time job. I think the second ward deserves somebody who is there full-time, and I also want to make sure that on council we are having good conversations. There should not be any back and forth, any sort of jabs or attacks up here. I don't think that is a good service to our candidates, and I don't think that is a good example for our children. Another thing would be that I think it serves council well that we respect our staff. I am currently working for the city of Evanston, so I feel it and I hear it, the lack of respect that our city staff receives. And I understand that not many people on council are going to agree with me and say that that's not true, but it is. So we need to make sure that we are respecting our staff, because when we respect our staff, we serve our council better, procedures move forward better, and just everything works out better for everybody involved up here. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Reed.
Thank you. I think I do have a somewhat unique perspective on this. As Councilmember Harris mentioned, Councilmember Burns in the next meeting might try to challenge and say that he serves on more committees, but count the numbers and you'll see. But I've served on just about every committee that a council member can serve on, and I think that has been tremendously helpful for me to deliver on the things that 8th Warders need. It was happenstance that because I serve on the Housing and Community Development Committee, that a neighbor had been complaining about getting an alley paved, and I was able to use that committee to jump the 8th Ward ahead and get that alley paved for them sooner than later. And so I think one is that council members need to serve on committees. We have some council members like myself who serve on just about all of them, and you have some who serve on no committees. And I think we need to ensure that council members are serving on committees because it gives you a deeper understanding of what's going on here. And I think we also need to ensure that we remember that under state law, our power is purely legislative. We aren't the city of Chicago. We're not a constituent service office. We're not set up to be a constituent service office in the way that the city of Chicago is. But I do think that there is an expectation to some degree of that in the community. And I think that in order to become more efficient, more effective, we need to ensure that we are providing council members with the resources to live up to community.
Candidate Rogers, I'm running up against the clock here, people.
Okay. I think one of the first things that we can do is we often hear from people that they didn't know that things were happening, which is the fault of the city. The city needs to do a better job of going out and engaging people as opposed to putting out a notice and saying we're having a meeting at such and such a time and whoever shows up, because people have conflicts with that, whether it be childcare issues, work issues, things like that. So we really have to do a better job of going out into the community. We have to rely on our professional staff to support us, and we need to have good quality staff that is empowered to do their jobs, that has the tools to do their jobs so that we can do our jobs better as a city council. And we have to show up. We need to be present everywhere. And we need to be engaged, and we need to make sure that people are being represented not just in our wards, but across the city. We do have a primary responsibility to work within our wards, but as been mentioned several times here, we are elected officials for the entire city, and we are stewards of the entire city. There's not the benefit of just saying, well, that's north of Oakton, so I don't have to worry about it. So we really need to do a very good job of just showing up, making sure people know what's going on, and engaging them and supporting our staff so that we can do the jobs that need to be done up here.
Candidate Cannon.
All right, thank you. So procedures and changes or recommendations. So I think, going to boards and commissions meetings and understanding what it is that they're doing on those boards is very important. I think that a lot of people in the community don't understand because they just know that we just have a lot of boards. And so, educating the community about the different boards, there could be, we don't have the township anymore. So, for people to kind of determine what board they could go to if they needed assistance. So understanding that, and of course they would need to go to their council member and people in the city, but just people understanding who they should go to and, the whole process. I think is very important. I think it's important that we have community engagement. I think there's a lot of people who would like to be engaged, and I think we need to encourage people, more people to become engaged, whether we agree with their views or their perspectives or not. They're still residents of Evanston, of the ward, and we, we need everyone to lean in, buy in, to make Evanston the truly equitable, inclusive city where, we can do the best for and beyond for our residents here. Thank you.
Okay, I feel like I really blew it here. We're running over, but you're gonna all have a chance for a 1.5 minute wrap up, and we're gonna start with candidate Mendoza. I think I'm right on this. Yeah, because she had, okay, you go first for the final.
All right. Yes, so thank you so much for having this. Today's International Women's Day, and I think it's wonderful that the Second Ward has 3 women who want to be in leadership. I think that's beautiful. And thank you so much for media to being here to really appreciate the work you guys do for the city and keeping our residents informed and hearing us when one of us somebody up here says, hey, put this out in the community. But when you vote for me, you're bringing a voice who wants to stay accessible and transparent. You're bringing a voice that is not going to only knock on your door when it's election season, but I'm going to knock on your doors, especially when there are important issues that are coming up, and making sure that you stay informed. And that's by having meetings often, and that's by being available full-time for you. This will be my full-time job. I think we're in a time where we need to be focusing on a national and on a local level. So we need to make sure we have someone up here who understands the issues that are at large going on nationally. And I am somebody who stays well informed on those issues too, and want to make sure that we're doing the best for our residents, whether you are new here or you've been here your whole life for 6, 7 generations. I think it's important to have a voice that represents those issues. But thank you so much. Please vote Mendoza. Starting March 17 is early voting. Get out the vote, and whether you vote for me or not, please tell your neighbors, your friends, your families, everybody in Evanston to get out the vote. I don't think we should only be having 1,300 engaged voters every 4 years. Thank you.
Candidate Reed.
Thank you. I'm really honored to have been able to sit down with all of my colleagues here who are fighting to make our city a better place. I am someone who has experienced, my lived experience as someone who is growing up. I was in foster care with a Latino family. I had 2 parents in prison, and I think it is critical that we are representing the issues of folks who are least proximate to power. That is why I have pushed for issues like participatory budgeting, which had record number of participants from the Black community in Evanston and from the Latino community, and made sure that folks who are single parents were able to participate in a meaningful way. That's why I have fought to ensure that when we are seeking new sources of revenue, we are focusing on sources of revenue that hit the folks who can most afford it, like our large institutions, like Northwestern, like our wealthier residents. And I think it's critical that here in the eighth ward, I hold monthly ward meetings to ensure that we are creating a venue for residents to have real conversation. And I fear that we could be heading toward 4 years ago, eighth warders firmly rejected the last council member and their style of governance, and I fear that with my opponent we will be backsliding to a sense where some folks feel involved and some folks feel left out.
Okay, that's enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Rogers.
Thank you. Again, thank you to the League for hosting us. Thank you to everyone who's put themselves out there. It takes a special type of person to kind of throw their hat in the ring to run for public office, and especially in a city that's as engaged as Evanston, because if you have 500 people in the room, there are 1,000 different opinions. We've talked a lot about different issues that are facing the city today or in the short term, but we need to also keep in mind that we're electing somebody for a 4-year term and that things are going to be happening over those 4 years. It's going to be a rough 4 years without the federal government helping us. And so we need to be a nimble and adjustable organization as the city in order to make sure that we're doing what we need to do for people. I think that it's very important to engage the people in the city and make sure that their voices are being heard. And rather than run through a whole list of things that I want to do, I would encourage you to go to rogersforevanston8.com. You can read more about me and about the things I'm looking to do. And also just to make sure that you do get out and vote. It's kind of sad that the 8th Ward has one of the lowest turnouts in the city. And so I'm hoping that we can actually turn that around and become much more engaged and get people out there to vote. Early voting happens beginning next week, a week from Monday, and then the election is actually on April 1st. So thank you again, and good luck to everybody.
Candidate Cannon.
All right. Again, like everyone previously said, thank you so much for having this forum and taking time out of your Saturday. I'm running because I think that, Evanston deserves a councilperson who's going to put the people first. I'm concerned about the people more than I am the city. And then what the city desires, what our residents needs is my my top priority. I'm not interested in special interests. I will fight for affordable housing, transparent and an equitable community. I have a proven track record of advocacy in the second ward as well as throughout the city. I've been a champion to advocate for a housing solution and helping and supporting working families and, of course, protecting the environment. I don't plan on making empty promises. I will work towards, real results. I will listen and engage and make decisions that reflect the needs and the desires of the residents, and not outside influences. Leadership to me is about service, integrity, and accountability, and that's exactly what I would bring to the council. So your vote is your choice, but I think together we can build a stronger Evanston together, and I humbly ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidate Harris.
Okay, I'll close us out. Thank you so much. I've proven, so I appreciate everyone being here. As soon as this is over, I actually need to get to the airport because I have been appointed by the National League of Cities to be on two commissions, the Race Commission and the University Commission. So we have a meeting in Washington, D.C., so I'll be doing speed limit, but quickly getting to the airport to be able to represent the city. I hold monthly ward meetings. I believe in praising people. That is how you get the best out of people and not admonishing them on a regular basis. I work with the community, not only my community, but the city. I work across the ward lines. I've been commended by staff, city commissions. I come to when second ward is at a land use and there's something about the second ward, I show up so that I can understand. The preservation committee, when they have something that involves the second ward, I'm present. So that's what you deserve, someone who is present, someone who can stand the line without being argumentative. We can disagree without being disagreeable and get to the finish line. And I have done that successfully for the past 2 years, and I look forward to everybody having confidence that I can do that again. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you all for doing such a wonderful job. We are recording the forum, and it'll be available on the league website. Don't forget to vote. Thank you.